The rain poured down in steady sheets, drenching the empty sidewalks and making the streetlights shimmer against the wet pavement. She sat on the worn-out bench at the bus stop, arms wrapped tightly around herself, trying to ignore the cold that seeped into her bones. Nobody ever noticed her. She was just another face in the crowd, another soul passing through life unnoticed. But tonight, everything was about to change. He drove past the bus stop every evening on his way home. His life was predictable meetings, phone calls, and the constant pressure to be the best. He never paid attention to the world outside his tinted windows. But for some reason, tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way the rain blurred the city lights, or maybe it was just exhaustion weighing on his mind. But his gaze flickered toward the bench. That's when he saw her. Something about the way she sat there, lost in thought, made him slow down. She wasn't looking at her phone like everyone else. She wasn't hurrying to escape the rain. She just sat there still, as if she had nowhere to be, no one waiting for her. His hands tightened around the steering wheel, an unexpected wave of curiosity washing over him. Who was she? The bus arrived, its brakes hissing as it came to a stop. But she didn't move. She watched as the doors opened, as people hurried inside, shaking off their umbrellas and chattering about their day. And then, as quietly as she had been sitting there, she turned away from the bus and walked into the rain. He didn't know why, but something in his chest tightened. He had places to be, deadlines to meet, but at that moment, all he could think about was her. Before he could stop himself, he pulled over. She didn't notice him at first. She kept walking, arms still wrapped around herself, head down as if lost in thought. He hesitated, debating with himself. What was he doing? He didn't even know her. But something told him this wasn't just a random moment. This wasn't just another stranger in the city. He rolled down his window. "Hey, do you need a ride?" She stopped, startled. For the first time, she looked up at him. And that was when everything shifted. Her eyes, there was something familiar about them. A strange sense of déjà vu gripped him, as if he had seen those eyes before, in another time, another place. She stared at him for a long moment, and then, without a word, she turned and walked away. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched her disappear into the night. Who was she? And why did it feel like he was supposed to know her? That moment should have ended there. Just a fleeting encounter on a rainy night, two strangers crossing paths, before fading back into their separate worlds. But it didn't. As he drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just lost something important. He kept replaying the look in her eyes, the way she had stared at him, as if searching for something she couldn't find. He didn't even know her name, yet she had left a mark on him, like a half-forgotten memory trying to resurface. The city lights blurred past his window, but his mind was stuck in that moment. He had spent years building his life, carving out his own path, never stopping to wonder if he had missed something along the way. But now, a single glance from a stranger had unraveled that certainty. Sleep didn't come easily that night. His mind kept circling back to her. Why had she walked away? Where was she going? Who was she? And why did he feel like he should already know the answers? The next morning, he tried to push it aside, to bury the feeling beneath his usual routine. Meetings, calls, deadlines, it was all there, waiting for him like always. But the moment he stepped out onto the street, the rain from last night still lingering in the air, his eyes instinctively flickered toward the bus stop. It was empty. Of course it was. He told himself to forget it. It was ridiculous, holding on to a moment that didn't mean anything. But as he moved through his day, distractions piled up, yet nothing could pull him out of that quiet unease settling in his chest. He found himself taking a different route home that evening, one that led him past the bus stop again. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, maybe that she'd be there, sitting just like before, lost in her thoughts. But the bench was empty. Still, he slowed down just for a second. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. Not at the bus stop, but further down the street, near a small cafe tucked between two old buildings. She wasn't sitting inside, sipping coffee or reading a book like the other customers. She was standing outside, her gaze lost in the distance, as if she wasn't really there at all. Before he could think, he parked. It was reckless, unnecessary. He didn't even have a reason. But that pull, that quiet, unexplainable pull, was stronger than reason. He stepped out into the cool evening air, his footsteps light on the pavement as he approached. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was still lost in whatever thoughts kept her so far away from the world around her. He hesitated just a few steps away. "Hey." Her head turned slowly, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she just looked at him, as if she was trying to decide if he was real or just another passing face in the crowd. "You left last night," he said, filling the silence when she didn't speak. "I asked if you needed a ride." Her lips parted slightly, then pressed together again. She looked at him like she wasn't sure if she should answer. And then, finally, she spoke. "I know." That was it. 2 words, quiet and careful, but they held something unspoken beneath them. He studied her for a moment. There was something about her, something distant yet familiar, like a song he had heard once, but couldn't quite remember. "Are you okay?" he asked. She blinked, as if the question caught her off guard. "Why do you care?" He wasn't sure how to answer that. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. She exhaled softly, a hint of something almost like a smile flickering at the edge of her lips, but it never fully formed. "You should go," she said. He frowned. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him, her eyes searching the street like she was expecting something or someone. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Because some things aren't meant to be found." A chill ran through him, not from the air, but from the way she said it. And then, before he could say another word, she turned and walked away. He stood there, watching her disappear into the night again. Every instinct told him to let it go. She had made it clear she didn't want to be found. And yet, something about her words, about the way she had looked at him, lingered in his mind like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Over the next few days, he tried to push the encounter out of his head. He drowned himself in work, in the usual routine that had always kept him occupied. But no matter how much he tried to focus, his thoughts kept circling back to her. The way she had spoken, as if she carried a weight no one could see. The way she had looked past him, as if something unseen haunted her. It was by chance, or maybe something more, that he saw her again. He was walking down a quieter part of town, a place he rarely visited, when he caught sight of her in the distance. This time, she wasn't alone. She stood in front of a man, her posture tense, her hands clenched at her sides. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but something about the way she held herself rigid, unmoving, made his chest tighten. The man leaned in, speaking low and deliberate, his expression unreadable. And then, without warning, he grabbed her wrist. Something inside him snapped. Before he even realized what he was doing, he was moving toward them. "Hey?" His voice cut through the air, sharp and immediate. The man let go, turning slowly, his expression shifting into something guarded. The woman, she barely reacted at first. Then, as her eyes met his, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Fear? It was gone before he could tell. The man studied him for a moment before stepping back. "I don't think this concerns you," he said coolly. "She doesn't look like she wants to be here," he replied, his jaw tight. There was a brief silence, the kind that stretched just a little too long. Then, without another word, the man turned and walked away. The woman let out a slow breath, rubbing her wrist absent-mindedly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked at him, that same unreadable expression on her face. "You need to stop following me." "I wasn't," he said honestly. "I just happened to be here." She studied him, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Finally, she sighed. You shouldn't have done that. He grabbed you. It wasn't what you think. Then what was it? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and started walking. He hesitated, then followed. After a while, she spoke, her voice quieter this time. You're not going to stop, are you? Not until I get some answers. She let out a small, humorless laugh. Then you're wasting your time. Maybe. They walked in silence for a while, the city's sounds filling the spaces between them. He knew she was debating something in her head, fighting some internal battle he wasn't part of. Finally, she stopped. I didn't ask for your help, she said. I know. She looked at him for a long time, as if searching for something in his face. Then, to his surprise, she said, Come on. Where? She didn't answer. She just started walking again. And this time, he followed without hesitation. They walked in silence for a long time, the city shifting around them, growing quieter as they moved away from the busy streets. He didn't know where she was leading him, but he didn't ask. Something told him that if he spoke now, if he pushed too hard, she'd disappear again. Finally, she stopped in front of an old building, the kind that had been standing for decades, forgotten by time. The street was empty. The only sound the faint hum of a distant car passing by. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. You wanted answers, she said. Here's your chance. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. He hesitated only for a moment before following her. The air inside was heavy, carrying the scent of dust and something else, something faintly familiar, though he couldn't quite place it. The room was dimly lit, a few old lamps casting long shadows against the walls. There were papers scattered on a wooden table, a few worn-out chairs, and a single window covered with heavy curtains. She walked to the table and picked up a photograph, staring at it for a moment before handing it to him. He took it, his fingers brushing against the worn edges. It was a picture of a man. Something about him felt familiar, but the image was faded, making it hard to make out the details. He looked at her, waiting for an explanation. That man, she said quietly, is the reason I can't let you get involved. He frowned, glancing back at the photo. Who is he? Her grip tightened on the edge of the table. Someone who doesn't like to lose. The words sent a chill through him. He could hear the tension in her voice, the way she was carefully choosing what to say. Is he the one you were talking to earlier? She nodded slowly. Who is he to you? He asked. She hesitated, then sighed. It doesn't matter. It does, if he's dangerous. She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw something raw in her eyes. It's too late for that. I've been running from him for years. The weight of her words settled between them. He thought about the way she had looked over her shoulder that night in the rain, the way she had told him some things weren't meant to be found. He hadn't realized it then, but she hadn't just been talking about herself. She had been warning him. You don't have to run anymore, he said. A bitter smile crossed her lips. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She shook her head. If I tell you everything, you won't walk away. He didn't know why, but he already knew she was right. He should have left this alone. He should have ignored the feeling that had pulled him toward her in the first place. But it was too late now. Then don't push me away, he said. For a long time, she didn't respond. The only sound was the faint creaking of the old building around them. And then, finally, she spoke. There's no going back after this. He met her gaze, steady and unwavering. I'm not going anywhere. She exhaled softly, as if she had been holding her breath. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Then you need to know the truth. She looked away for a moment, as if gathering the courage to say something she had been holding back for too long. Then she took a slow breath and spoke. He's not just someone I'm running from, she said. He's someone I used to trust. The words hit harder than he expected. He had assumed the man from the photograph was a threat, but he hadn't considered what it meant if she had once trusted him. There was more to this than just fear, there was history. Something deep enough to leave scars. "Who is he?" he asked again, his voice quieter this time. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration flickering in her eyes. "He was someone I thought would protect me. Someone I thought I could count on." She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "And then I found out the truth." He waited, giving her the space to say it on her own terms. She finally met his gaze, and the weight in her eyes sent a shiver through him. "He's my brother." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. He hadn't expected that. Not even close. A storm of emotions crossed her face, anger, regret, something else he couldn't quite name. "I didn't plan on running forever," she continued, "but I didn't have a choice. He's not the person I thought he was. And now?" She hesitated. "Now he knows I'm not who he thought I was either." The way she said it sent a cold wave through him. "What does that mean?" She hesitated for only a second before stepping closer, lowering her voice. "I know something I was never supposed to find out." He swallowed, his pulse quickening. "About him?" She nodded. "And if he finds me again, he won't let me go this time." The reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't just about escaping someone dangerous. This was about secrets that someone was willing to do anything to keep buried. He glanced at the photograph still in his hands. The man staring back at him didn't just look familiar. He had seen him before. His stomach tightened. "I know him." She stiffened. "What?" He turned the photo slightly, studying it under the dim light. "I've seen him before. I didn't realize it at first, but now I remember." He looked up at her. "Your brother, he's not just dangerous. He's connected to something much bigger, isn't he?" The look in her eyes was all the confirmation he needed. And in that moment, he knew he was already in too deep. She stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he thought she might deny it, might try to convince him that he was wrong. But then she exhaled, her shoulders sinking slightly, as if the weight of the truth was finally too much to carry alone. "If you've seen him," she said slowly, "then you've already been pulled into this more than you realize." His grip on the photograph tightened. He had assumed this was just about her past, her brother, and whatever had forced her to run. But now, standing there, watching the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides, he realized he had only been seeing the surface of something much deeper. "I need you to tell me everything," he said. She hesitated. Then finally, she nodded. "I found out something I was never meant to know," she said, her voice quieter now. "Something he was involved in. Something dangerous." She swallowed, looking around the dimly lit room as if making sure no one else could hear. "And now, I think he's covering his tracks." A chill ran through him. Covering his tracks how? She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "People are disappearing." The words sent a sharp jolt through him. He had expected danger, but this was something else entirely. "Who?" he asked. She hesitated, then reached into the pile of papers on the table. She pulled out another photograph, this one newer than the first. She handed it to him. The moment he looked at it, the breath left his lungs. He knew the face. Not just in passing, not just from a fleeting encounter. He knew this person. He had spoken to them, worked with them, and now they were missing. His mind raced, trying to connect the dots. How had he not seen it before? How had he not realized that all of this was connected? She was watching him carefully, waiting for him to understand. "This isn't just about me," she said softly. It never was. His pulse pounded in his ears. If this was bigger than her, if it reached into his world too, then it meant something else. It meant he wasn't just helping her anymore. He was a target too. His mind raced as he stared at the photograph in his hands. The familiar face, now linked to something far darker than he had ever imagined, made his stomach turn. He had thought he was just helping her, protecting someone who needed it. But now, he realized, he was tangled in something much bigger, something dangerous. She watched him, waiting for his reaction. He could see the concern in her eyes, the way she was bracing herself for what he might do next. He took a slow breath, trying to steady himself. "If people are disappearing," he said finally, his voice low, "then we don't have much time." She nodded. "I know." He put the photograph down carefully, his mind sorting through everything. There had to be a way to stop this, to expose whatever her brother was doing. But they needed proof, real proof. "I have a contact," he said. "Someone who might be able to help us." She looked skeptical. "Can they be trusted?" "They work in law enforcement," he said. "If we give them the right evidence, they can make sure this doesn't just get buried." For the first time, she looked like she wanted to believe in something. They spent the next few hours gathering everything, every document, every name, every connection they could piece together. As the weight of what they were uncovering became clearer, so did the risk they were taking. They left the building just before dawn, their hands clutching the evidence that could change everything. The streets were quiet, the air thick with the kind of tension that told him they weren't safe yet. They moved quickly, keeping to side streets, avoiding cameras. But deep down, he knew they weren't the only ones moving. It happened just as they reached the meeting point. A black car pulled up too fast, the tires screeching against the pavement. He barely had time to react before the doors opened and figures stepped out. Her grip tightened around his arm. "It's him," she whispered. Her brother stood just a few feet away, his expression calm, controlled. But his eyes, they held something colder than before. "You should have stayed gone," he said, his voice even. She didn't flinch. "I'm done running." A tense silence settled between them. Then her brother glanced at him. "And you? You should have walked away when you had the chance." He met his gaze steadily. "Maybe, but I didn't." Something shifted in her brother's expression, something unreadable. Then, without another word, he signaled to the men beside him. It all happened in an instant. The struggle, the rush of movement, the chaos. He fought back, trying to hold on to the evidence, trying to keep her safe. But there were too many of them. He heard her shout, saw her get pulled back, and in that moment, something inside him snapped. He wasn't going to let them win. Then, just as suddenly, everything shifted. Sirens cut through the air. Tires screeched. The backup he had called, the contact he had trusted, arrived just in time. The men scattered, but it was too late. Law enforcement swarmed the scene, securing everything before it could be wiped away. Her brother stood frozen, his calm exterior finally cracking as the truth closed in on him. For the first time, he looked cornered. It was over. She exhaled sharply, her hands shaking as she clutched the evidence. "We did it," she murmured. He nodded, still catching his breath. "Yeah." She looked at him then, something unspoken passing between them. "Thank you." He managed a small smile. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." In the days that followed, everything unfolded. Her brother was taken into custody, his connections exposed. The missing people were found, some safe, others lost forever to the damage he had caused. But justice, in some form, had been served. She stood beside him as they watched the sun rise over the city. For the first time, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. "So," he said, glancing at her. "What now?" She smiled, a real smile this time. "I think I get to start over." He nodded. "You deserve that." She looked at him, her expression softer now. "So do you." And as they stood there, the weight of everything they had been through slowly fading into the morning light, he realized something. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning.